Hi everybody, MayorBK here, and welcome back to another episode of Bay County Delmarva. I know it's been a couple weeks with the 4th of July holiday and everything in July, so we're going to get back into this series and continue building out Bay County Delmarva. Before we do, I want to spend at least this one other episode here in the city of Franklin and develop the first port of Franklin. As you may recall, eventually, as Bay County expands, we're going to bring the port down here into this more central location. This area is also really close to the interstate highway and has a rail option already attached to it, which is really nice, and good deep water access. So eventually the port of Franklin, or I should say the Bay County port, will expand into this area. But to start, I want to build the historic port of Franklin. We've been working here on the historic areas of Franklin, expanding this city and getting kind of the foundation as the principal city of Bay County. But with that, and with Franklin's history, and really just since the founding, the port aspect was a big part of it. So we'll tap into the Bay County Historical Archives and get a look from photos, paintings, and drawings of what Franklin's harbor looked like in that time frame. Franklin, as you may recall, was founded as the settlement of Springport in the Delaware colony, and really since then, fishing, seafaring, and marine transportation has been a staple to the city's economy. The location near the mouth of the Delaware River made Franklin's harbor a major source of commerce. The city quickly became the region's hub for shipping, and the small marshes and sheltered inlets that the original expedition party landed on to survey the land of what is now Bay County made for a safe, natural harbor to import supplies for the growing settlement and passenger traffic from Philadelphia, other Delaware Valley cities, and other cities in the Northeast United States. By the mid-1800s, Franklin's harbor, though, was starting to slip in competitiveness to faster-growing ports in Philadelphia and Baltimore especially. Particularly a naturally deeper waterway, combined with local development of new dredging technologies, really helped Baltimore's port gain significant momentum in that era. Following the Civil War in the late 1860s and into the 1870s, several Franklin business leaders met with local officials and then state officials regarding port expansion projects and dredging the Franklin harbor to keep up with demands and to keep up with the larger vessels, and overall close that competitive gap between Franklin's harbor and other cities in the region. By the late 1800s, the Rivers and Harbors Appropriation Act of 1899 lobbied successfully from commercial interest in Philadelphia, but also a secondary group from Franklin, created an improvement plan to remedy the shallowness of the Delaware River and dredge a new channel to allow larger ocean vessels the ability to navigate up the Delaware River. The Army Corps of Engineers then dredged a new 30-foot deep by 600-foot wide channel up the Delaware River. The dredging projects also included maintenance and dredging upkeep to the Port of Philadelphia, as well as new dredging projects around the Franklin Harbor. That deepened Franklin's harbor's main channel to connect it up to the main navigation channel in the Delaware River, and also had other various infrastructure projects around the port to shore up the safe and effective navigation of vessels going in and out of Franklin. That really helped Franklin's harbor continue to be integral in the city of Bay County as a major commercial and passenger port. And really that leads up to more of the modern time frame, and we'll get into the post-war era of Franklin's harbor and the Bay County Port Authority picking up in the 1960s in another episode. But that gives you the background of Franklin's harbor, and what we're working on now is really creating the Franklin harbor after the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899, when it was made a lot more efficient, more navigable, and more modern. And you can see from the pictures and drawings and paintings from the Bay County Historical Archive of what the Franklin Harbor looked like before that dredging project. It was really just a mix of commercial residential buildings with dock work and scaffolding, really against a pretty natural harbor situation. Marshes and non-dredged beaches. So it really made for inefficient goods movements between land and the vessels, and really created that economic gap that we saw between Franklin's harbor in the late 1800s versus Philadelphia and Baltimore especially. So this marshy area on the southern side of the Franklin city limits was the original port of Franklin, and with that 1899 Appropriations Act, the modern dredging occurred, and with that, there was infill projects to create more industrial space around the port and just lay out better structure to the port. So we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so we're going to get started with really what is Franklin and Bay County's first big mega project, dredging the Franklin Harbor. So first up, I want to clear out all the trees and rock formations and just give us a blank slate to work with and a clean palette where we can see the topography of the area that we're working in. Now you can see with the trees removed that we're really working with a pretty low-lying area of marshy, swampy terrain and then just some rolling hills up from the water's edge. So a doable project in terms of the turn-of-the-century earth-moving technologies. Measure It is going to be a pretty big tool for us today, and the first thing I want to do is find a point in the bay that is the water depth that we're going to take the measurement from. So I want to find an area that's about 40 feet. The original Appropriations Act that I mentioned earlier, the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899, I think dredged the Delaware River channel to 30 feet, and then that was subsequently expanded and dug deeper through the century. I think now it's about 50 feet deep, if I remember correctly. But we're just going to find a point that's about 40 feet, and that'll just take care of it in one stop. Instead of dredging now to 30 feet and then going back later on, I just want to do this once here today. I want to bring my brush size up and then set the brush to the more defined border. And then there's an area out here about 42 feet, so we'll take it from there. That's the right area, although now it says it's like 47 feet. We'll take it from this area. I'd rather have it a little deeper than shallower, so we'll just go with it. It's somewhere in the 40 to 45 foot range, let's say. You can really see the channel as I bring it closer to shore and really cut into the shallower terrain. And I'm trying to keep this as straight as possible because the large ocean going ships aren't really that maneuverable. So we just want a straight channel that brings it all the way into the harbor. All right, let's zoom in here. Thinking about it again, it's just a little deep, but what I can do is just even it out a little bit. I can find an area that's right about 40 feet and then just level it from there. So I've zoomed in and now we're bringing it up just a notch. So I'll just recarve this channel and just put a little bit of the fill back into the bottom of the channel to bring it up to about 41 feet. Okay, so now we're back into the harbor area and I brought everything up to about 41 feet. Now we'll really start carving out the Franklin Harbor. As I said earlier, we'll kind of accentuate the shoreline and use it as a bit of a template. So we'll cut in here where there's already a bit of water coming in close, and then we'll level off the terrain around the water here at about 10 feet. This is pretty reasonable. What we're doing with these low-lying hills around the water's edge is just really leveling it off, taking away land from the higher areas and then filling in the low-lying areas. I just want to be careful here. I like the look of it, but I don't want to cut into the channel very much, so we'll bring this shoreline back a little bit. I'm being probably a little pickier than I need to be here. We'll add the quay walls in a few minutes, and that'll really help us, micromanage where the shoreline is. So I cut the channel a little bit wider here. We'll continue dredging out the harbor here. Want to get out, measure it again, and check some of the widths of the pier area. I have a bit of a plan for this area, and you'll see that when we detail the harbor. I just want to make sure it's a large enough space to work with. So now in this harbor area, we'll again take these two inlets and work from there. Okay, next up, let's get rid of the stub of Port Street that comes down from downtown Franklin. What I'm going to do is jump into a time lapse, since this is a lot of just detailing with the landscaping tools and the quay walls to get the outline of the harbor set up. Alright, now that we got the harbor roughed out, I'm going to add a little bit of land to this island out here. It's going to help protect the port a little bit, but also help balance out some of the environmental issues that we've caused dredging and terraforming the land to build the harbor here. We're going to say that they put some of the remaining infill and added it to this island to help create even a more sheltered harbor. Next up, I just want to smooth out things under the waterline and just make the edges look a little more natural looking. There we go. We got the port roughed out with the terraforming, so now we can do a few measurement checks and then add the quay walls. I'm going to lay some roads down to help square off the corners of this harbor basin, and then also help as guidelines for setting the quay walls. For the quay walls, I'm going to use the Industrial Quay Walls by Avanya. A great asset, detailed, and I think it fits perfectly with the theme that we're going for in the Franklin Harbor here. I want to keep a lot of the man-made parts of this harbor area on 45 and 90 degree angles, just to help contrast it with the marshy areas and the natural parts of the harbor. So now that we got the quay walls in, I want to object height everything to a nice even point, and we'll pick this point here that was set at around 10 feet. And yeah, just checking the measurements, is right about 10.92 feet, so that worked perfect. Things still don't look right here in this harbor basin, so I want to check things again and re-object height things. So ideally I didn't want to, but we're gonna have to change the height of the first road and those houses along Harbor Park. And just for simplicity, make them 10 feet above sea level to match the height of the quay walls. Alright, so that's a good look here at the harbor, now roughed in with the quay walls. Now I just want to let it run for a minute and let the water fill in. As frustrating it is to work with sometimes, they actually did a really nice job with the water physics in this game. The water is animated and sloshy and has a real density and feel to it. As the water is still flowing into our harbor, we can work on this island and re-landscape some of the marsh and aquatic grasses and shrubs that are found in this area. Alright, so that looks nice. I left the top part of the island unlandscaped because I think in reality, since that part is closer to the man-made parts of the harbor and also closer to the dredged deeper channel as well as seafaring ships, I think that part of the island would be a little more regulated. So we're going to add a quay wall to the channel side of the island. And again, I want to keep the quay walls to 90-degree and 45-degree angles to help contrast the man-made parts of the island and the man-made parts of the harbor from the natural areas. And I like that there's some sand on the outside of the quay walls too. It just shows that this part isn't as maintained as some of the other areas of the harbor. This part is closest to our channel, so that part would be a little more maintained. So I'll actually remove a little bit of the sand. Alright, and now the island's pretty much done. I think we're going to name this Buccaneer Island. And it's a little bit of a nod to, there's some rumors that Edward Teach, Blackbeard, actually sailed into the Delaware Bay, maybe even buried some treasure on what is now the land that's Delaware. So we're going to leave the harbor for a brief moment. I noticed when we were building the island that there was a power notice. And yeah, we are a little low on the power side of things. Thought I switched this around in one of the last episodes. I wonder if the save didn't go through. But we have access to the Industrial Evolution Content Creator Pack by Avanya. Avanya's in a lot of this episode, but also just a great content creator. So she has a lot of assets that are really great on the Steam Workshop. So I'm going to create a district here. And then we can add the Industrial Evolution into this district. There we go, got the district in. So I'm gonna name this. This is gonna be our Power and Light District. And I think it's fitting because the original power plants for Franklin are here. And I know that Modder Pack 20 is the Avanya's content creator pack. So I'll click on that in the district styles, and then you'll see those buildings will swap out, especially when we're dealing with the power. And then go in, and one of the new updates also had the advanced coal power plant. Uses coal to produce electricity, creates less pollution due to advanced carbon capture technology. So we're gonna add 2 of these. It has a little higher output than the original power plants. And honestly, it looks way better. It's less cartoony, it's a bigger size. It just looks a lot more realistic. We'll get 2 of them side by side, and it almost looks like one big power plant. Here's a closer look at these, and yeah, they just look a lot more realistic. A better size, just a really nice, clean looking power plant. Now kind of connecting the dots, it seems like it's the more realistic buildings and larger footprint is almost a little Easter egg for what's coming in City Skylines 2. It does show that the developers are listening to the community. All right, so back down to the harbor. We got everything roughed in with the quay walls. We got Buccaneer Island filled out. There's one more part here, and it's where the port ends and the Sterrett Manor property begins. When the dredging was going on in the harbor, the Sterretts, as we've learned, were a major player in the early Franklin politics and business scene. The Sterretts made their money in shipping, so when they saw the harbor dredging projects, they wanted to get in on it a little bit. We're gonna prep a little bit of their land. With the deep water dredging up along the side here of the port, the Sterretts wanted in on that and build a marina. So we're gonna bring up the land a little bit. They're gonna get a depth of about 20 feet for their marina, or sailing harbor back then. So we'll dredge out their Sterrett Marina and Sailing Harbor, and then we'll infill with a little land to help protect it. And I think I mentioned it a few episodes ago, I'm still not sure what to do with the Sterrett Manor property right now. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I think overall the main options would be to keep it private Sterrett Manor property, and basically, you know, other than building the manor, keep it untouched. The other options would be to open it up and say that the Sterretts eventually donated this land to Bay County and created a park or historic site. I guess in theory we could also develop it if the Sterretts got greedy eventually and decided to take the money instead of their beautiful property. You know, eventually as Bay County grew and land development prices skyrocketed, just like a lot of places in the US, you know, maybe the money was more worth it at that time. So a couple different options. Those are kind of the main 3 I see, but if you have any that I may have missed, feel free to throw those in the comments too. But yeah, I guess the main options, at least I see it, would be a park, nature preserve, historic site combo, or develop it, or leave it as a private Sterrett Manor property. Just cleaning up the terrain a little bit here along the Sterrett Sailing Harbor or Sterrett Marina. I really like the look of those coal power plants that we put into the Power and Light District. So I want to bring at least one of them down to the harbor, and that would make sense too, that ships would offload coal right onto the harbor and then get it processed here at the coal power plant. So let's set one of these up here. This first area of the harbor is going to be more of a city utilities area, or a city dock. We'll get it oriented the right way and then get the roads connected up. We can use Move It to get it tighter to the edge of the quay wall. And then get it connect up to the road network. Building roads adjacent to the quay walls can be pretty tricky. The quay walls are finicky and the networks kind of collide. Even with Anarchy on, it still is a bit tricky here, getting everything to line up. Alright, so we got the power plant and the road in. Next up I want to put the bus depot down here. It makes sense to put the bus depot more in the industrial area. This is not a bus station, it's more where the buses are going out, getting serviced, getting refueled, all that sort of thing. And we can put the ferry depot down here too. Haven't had it yet in the city, but you know, Bay County is a region with a lot of water, so ferry traffic is going to be a growing transportation option. We're going to rework the quay walls in this area and get enough space to put the ferry depot in. I have Anarchy on, so I was able to lay that over the existing road, and then we can come up to our unified UI tool and disconnect the ferry terminal from the road that it's paired with. And then I can just simply delete that road and then take our industrial road and just stretch it back out, and that should keep the ferry terminal connected. And actually that fits nicely the other way, so we'll turn the bus depot around. So next up down here I want to put the fishing harbor. Next up we need to connect our fishing route. I want to give a little action in the harbor so we can bring the fishing route inside the harbor, but in the shallow area. And kind of make it hug Buccaneer Island and then bring it through Buccaneer Pass and out into the main bay. There we go, you can see our fishing boats are headed out. Kind of follow this one up through the Franklin Harbor and then out Buccaneer Pass, which actually looks a little skinny now that I think about it. It's about 66 feet wide, so I guess it's doable, but let me just expand it a little bit and we can actually increase the depth a little bit through Buccaneer Pass as well. That looks better for the fishing boats. Alright, so next up, with the fishing harbor in place, we need the fish market. I want to put it down in here in close proximity to the harbor. Actually, right here works to redo a little bit of the road network in here, but that's not that bad. I don't like that road there still, so I'm going to slide the fish market over and put it right on the quay wall, which would make sense in real life. Boats would probably pull up there too and unload their fish. So one thing I like is our harbor faces a slightly different direction than the rest of the city and Harbor Park. It makes for some interesting connections connecting. This area is going to be known, I think, as the East Docks, since they're on the east side of the harbor. But connecting them up to Harbor Park just makes for a few different interesting angles. And building these roads again next to the quay walls is always an interesting task. I think we got things finally squared up. So in the history of Franklin, the East Docks was a pretty big industrial section. Obviously with the harbor right there, it was a really big important area for commerce and trade and unloading and loading the ships and also passengers from major East Coast cities. But now that we're gonna build this in more of a modern look, although keeping in mind some of the history. In the later half of the 20th century and into the 21st century, the area gentrified, especially once almost all of the major shipping moved over to the new Bay County Port Authority, and we'll build that in a future episode. With that, the city looked to develop the dilapidated and sometimes empty industrial lots that were making up the East Docks area. The sparsely populated area became a site for dumping and crime. Eventually, a developer came and proposed to the city turning the East Docks and the empty, basically industrial wasteland into a pedestrian-friendly, walkable, mixed-use development, and the city jumped at that opportunity. That significantly increased the land values in this part of Franklin as well as Bay County. So for now, we're just going to set the service area off to the side. And now that we have the pedestrian area marked off, we get access to a bunch of different roads and networks. We're going to convert this perimeter road into a bus only. As I said earlier, this is really one of the first big mega projects here in Franklin and Bay County. And I'm going to try and make sure I mention everybody's amazing assets used in this, but if I don't, it's definitely going to be listed in the lower third. But starting out for the East Docks, I want to get these in. They're called High-Rise Condo 77 meter 4x3, and that's by Smileys, another amazing content creator. I'm pretty sure we already have some Smileys assets. If not, we're definitely going to have more as this build continues. I guess the roads weren't perfectly at 90 degrees, so it's giving a little bit of a weird border. It's making this a little harder to put in than I expected. Building these roads again, like I said, next to the quay walls is a bit tricky sometimes. Using this new zoning tool that was put in one of the recent updates was really helpful too. So we removed zoning along the bus route and then zoned along the pedestrian walkway, so that makes it easier to put these in. And you can see there they come in a couple different colors. I think there's a few other places to get content, but the place that I go is Steam. So all the content creators and their assets that I use are available on Steam in the workshop. So two of these are technically facing forward and the ones on the end are facing backward. But I like that, it gives it a little bit of a difference. And then I like that we have the two orange ones in the middle and the two light ones on the outside. It looks really nice. These are really Franklin's first high-rise buildings, so a big historic moment here for the city and for Bay County. I like that a lot. I put a wider pedestrian path behind them. The East Dock Towers here are a historic moment for the city, and then eventually the rest of this land in the pedestrian area was developed. This would Pretty neat. I can toggle zoning on the pedestrian road as well. So let's get in here and allow zoning, and then I should be able to plop the new building in. This asset is the villas at Almar City by one of the legends, King Leno. So a really great asset, large apartment condo complex. It's modern, so it fits with the redevelopment of the industrial space that we're working with. These villas were built after the towers. The East Docks land started to get developed by the original developer who built the towers, and then eventually these villas came in more the 2000 era versus the 1990s of the towers, but still two modern complexes. And then the next asset is also a King Leno asset, and that is the Gramercy Commons. I think it fits really nice with the villas. Just a nice big large condo and apartment complex. It doesn't like the zoning on this corner, but we can cheat a little bit and use move it to copy the existing one. And then just turn it around so it faces the road, and that should work. And while we're using move it, we can just make sure everything is lined up nicely. I just want to nudge these villas over just a little bit. All right, and it looks like there's no icons flashing anywhere, so everybody's pretty happy. And I really like the look of this, a really nice wide pedestrian road separating kind of low to mid-rise condo development from the high-rise right along the waterfront. A really nice redevelopment project for the city of Franklin and for Bay County. Good tax revenue coming into the county. Now the lot behind these villas and condos is a little less desirable. And remember, we are in America here, so we do have to give some consideration for vehicles, even if the whole front part of the East Docks is pedestrian and bus-only road. I think it's realistic to have parking behind the condos for residents as well as shoppers and tourists. Pretty common, I think, in pedestrian-friendly areas. You see the larger complexes of condos, and then you see parking behind them. One of the other assets that came with one of the later updates is the parking garage, large multi-story parking garage, and I think that fits nice with the architecture of this area, and certainly that has nice capacity. You can imagine there's spots for visitors and tourists and shoppers, and then there's space designated parking on the top floors for the residents. Comes in a couple different varieties, but I think this the one that plopped down first is a nice architectural pairing for the apartments and condos. Now that I think about it, this road can connect all the way up and actually make this a one-way road to help with traffic circulation. This is one of the roads from our big roads assets, 1 unit wide alleyway. So to get up to there, we'll bring back the industrial road. I like the industrial roads mixing in because this was an industrial area, so I'm going to keep those in this area. And then behind the condos, we can also bring up our service unit. It doesn't look the greatest, it's kind of semi-industrial, so hiding it behind the complex in the back of this pedestrian-friendly area makes a lot of sense. And then behind this, we can just fill in with some commercial. I haven't decided about this triangle. I might save it for a later episode. But if you have ideas for this little triangle area, we can either turn it into a small park or maybe develop it into more commercial space. So let me know in the comments. Making sure all the water is under the roadways here in the East Docks. And here's a nice view of what we've done today. We've done a lot more than this, but here's a nice view of the East Dock. We have our city's utility pier with the new coal power plant, the bus depot, some industrial units, the fish market, and then also the ferry terminal and the fishing harbor. And then our new area here in the East Docks, Revitalization project in the 1990s through the 2000s to create the East Docks pedestrian area with the towers and then the condos and villas behind it and a nice large parking structure. So I'll leave you with this episode with a short cinematic recap of what we've done.